So welcome everyone to our webinar series, Decipher the Dating Code, Solving the Mystery of Dating in the Relationship in the 21st Century. My name is Dr. Dan Amzalang, and I'm your moderator for today's workshop. So here's a quick bit about myself. I'm a cognitive behavior psychotherapist and marriage and relationship coach, passionate about helping people build healthy and long-lasting relationships. Now, these workshop series explore the many challenges of modern dating, from online interaction and communication struggles to emotional availability and genuine connections. So our goal here is to help you navigate today's complex dating scene with clarity, confidence, and purpose. So joining me today at this workshop is our expert panelist, Lori Shapiro, a certified sex therapist helping couples explore sensitive topics related to BDSM and non-conforming sexual interest. But before we begin the workshop, I'll invite our guest panelist to briefly introduce herself, as no one else can do a better job. Lori, the floor is yours.
Thank you. My name is Lori Shapiro, and I have been a psychotherapist for approximately the past 30 years. I've worked in all different milieus with different sorts of people. I received my ASECT certification in sex therapy approximately 10 or 12 years ago. And so I've expanded into the LGBTQ a lot community, as well as BDSM and kink, alternate lifestyles, all kinds of non-conforming situations, relationships, polyamory, things of that nature. And I'm also a clinical supervisor, training other therapists to be therapists.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, Lori, thank you so much for being here today, attending the
Thank you for having me.
and we look forward to jumping into today's topic. So for me to get started with a real life scenario taken from some of my existing clients dealing with the topic that we will cover today. So here's a story. So one of my clients, and we're going to call her Maya, and as you know, for confidentiality purposes, we're not going to give her the real name. She came into my relationship coaching session after dating experience that left her confused, drained, and questioning her judgment. So she wasn't looking for casual attention. She was looking primarily for something real. But what she kept encountering during her journey felt like emotional whiplash. So Maya met someone through mutual friends of hers, and the connection felt immediate, too immediate and a bit too odd, especially the dating community and all. And over the first few days of talking, he was very expressive, very consistent, and emotionally open in a way that felt very, very rare. And as you know, this is what we call love bombing nowadays. So he asked deep questions in the beginning, shared vulnerable stories, and spoke about feeling a strong connection within 1 week of meeting her. So Maya, in return, wanted to trust the moment, but she kind of had her intuition talk to her otherwise. And that's where the quiet began to blur, the whole process. So after that, there was no real intention, no direction, and his intent or his desire start going downhill. So as they passed, the communication that she had in the beginning was very, very inconsistent with him. And when she finally asked what he wanted, his answer stayed very, very vague and no commitment standing behind what he really wanted. And that caused as well some issues on how they were going to move forward with that with that relationship. So that's what she realized, something very important. Depth without clarity creates confusion, not connection. There was no rhythm, no gradual building of trust through time and shared consistency. It felt intimate at times, but it wasn't stable intimacy. It was emotional acceleration. So this is what we're going to talk about today. During her process, she learned the real connection doesn't push that depth, it grows into it. Now, her biggest shift was this. If attention isn't clearly expressed, don't assume it. And again, assumption makes an ass out of you and me, okay? So if words don't match direction, you must trust pattern over promises. So this is what we're going to talk today with Lori, with the guest panelist. So when we talk about conscious communication, we need to talk about intentions early and not mislead with the other person in a malicious way. So how do you clearly talk about communication with that person? Do you go and you're very demanding, Lori, or you try to wheel yourself into it slowly by telling him or her that you want to be able to have constant and clear communication from the beginning? And if they don't, then they have to be straightforward and not mislead the other person.
Absolutely. I agree 100%. I work a lot with clients around these particular topics and talking about intention and the way that we communicate in a mindful manner. So, an initial pretty big red flag is, if they're only sharing about themselves and they're not really interested in you and they're not asking you the questions that they're sharing things, you know, that's where that love bombing comes in because they're like, look at me, I'm open, I'm honest, I'm telling you about myself. Whereas, if they're not showing genuine interest in what you're thinking and you're feeling and asking you questions about yourself as well, I think that would be something that I would recommend people do and say, it's interesting. We talk so much about all of your life and all of your history and all these other things. Isn't there anything you want to know about me? To see whether or not they have that kind of interest, because that definitely shows you what their intentions are. And if their intentions are that they just want to get attention from somebody, spend time with somebody, maybe have, sex with somebody, it's not really a good foundation, because that's the unraveling of a relationship is you tell each other your stories, you share experiences, but you don't start off with all the deeper things, where you went to school, what was your major, what do you do for a living, like those sorts of mild things, because people have to earn your trust and earn your vulnerability. Just them being vulnerable doesn't mean that you should be vulnerable, because then you're setting yourself up for pain.
Correct, yes. But then if let's say you express your intention early on, especially when you are in the dating phase and going out and getting to know each other better, we see a lot more people in the dating scene, Lori, where they are kind of like not trying to be too open too quickly because they're afraid of
Mhm.
scaring the other person. So I just want to know exactly what is the I'm sorry about the noise, that's construction in the neighborhood, so I apologize for this. But yeah, can you tell us about what is okay to be able to
Mhm.
express and to hold on or to keep inside?
Well, I would say that it's okay to say to people, I'm looking for something substantive. I'm looking for a relationship. I'm not just looking for friends. You don't have to say I'm looking to get married and have children and go all the way down that path, but letting them know that you're not looking for a casual relationship. You're looking for it to grow and to build, and being pretty upfront about that from the beginning. You don't have to go into, all of the details of how you see your life looking, but letting them know that you're not interested in just, getting together once in a blue moon, that you're really looking for something more significant.
Hmm.
And I don't think that somebody who's also looking for a significant relationship would find that off-putting, because they'd be like, me too. I'm looking to meet someone for consistency and to build and to grow with. Then you're on the same page. Where somebody says, oh, well, I just got out of a bad relationship, I'm not sure that I'm ready to move into something, then at least you know where they stand, and then you can decide whether or not you want to take that journey and continue to see them.
But then if we see people that are serial daters, Lori, and or they have a traumatic, I would say, experience from the past, from childhood, that they're afraid of being alone. And
Hmm.
that constitute them to be able to behave in a way that they always have to be with someone. So
Hmm.
yes, every conversation you're gonna have with them, they're gonna generally tell you, yes, I'm ready for a relationship. Even though they broke up 2 days ago with someone, they're ready to start a new one just a few days later. So, what are
Right.
red flags to be careful about? Is it a
I would definitely say that's a red flag right there. If they say, I was just in a long-term relationship, or I'm going through a divorce,
yes,
it's fine if they want to date, but if you're looking for someone to be in a relationship with, that's not somebody you want to be in a relationship with, because they haven't healed all of their, you know,
trauma?
pain or wounds, or if there's any kind of grief that they're experiencing, there's no way to know, you know, what it is and when they're going to get through it. So it's important to, listen to what they're saying and where they're at. Or, if they say to you, and a lot of times they will, I date, here and there, but, asking like, how often do you go on dates? How often do you meet new people? Things of that nature. And if you see that there's always somebody around, or they're, in serious relationships and multiple times and then they end, those are things I would be concerned about as well. So, if you meet a 50-year-old man who's never been married, I would be asking myself, why? Why have you never been married?
Yes. But then some people may be afraid because especially if they were engaged and then after that they were cheated on. And so maybe they said, wow, I dodged a bullet on that one. And then they're afraid to be able to give that trust to someone else. So
Right.
not being married, does it constitute as a big red flag?
It depends on the situation. If they say to you, that they've never been in a relationship more than a year, that would concern me because the longevity isn't there. And so if they said, oh, I was with my girlfriend for 4 or 5 years and then she cheated on me and we broke up, that would make sense to me,
Okay.
that they didn't go into that space. But if somebody's their examples of what their dating life has been like has no real, longevity to the relationships. Also asking about relationships with their family. Like when people tell me they have no relationship with their family, I have to ask myself, why do you not have any relationship with their family? And I'm not talking about in cases of like abuse or things where, you had a horrible childhood and you're not in touch with their family. Some people will just be like, well, I don't really talk to them. And they don't really have a specific reason for not talking. If somebody tells me they haven't talked to their mother, in a year, I'm going to wonder, why aren't you talking to your mother? So that's another way to tease out the things that they're going through or have been through to see whether or not they have the capability or the emotional maturity to be in a serious relationship.
Interesting. So you have the focus on BDSM and non-conforming sexual acts and or whatever I would say they are interested in. So do you think that their approach to intimacy is different or they're wired differently because of them being more open about sexuality?
I think that people who are in BDSM, kink, poly,
They came what?
they're scripting things, they're talking about around all kinds of things. So if you're if you're in a relationship where there's a power dynamic, they really get specific on what those power dynamics are in the relationship. And I think that there's a lot of times their communication styles are better because they want to ask all the questions and all the things and understand where the other person comes from because trust is a huge part of that community.
That's so true. Absolutely. And but do you feel that dealing with them or providing them with your service is easier because they're more likely to communicate with accuracy what they want, how soon they want it, or how fast they want it, or how often, or the frequency, whatever it is, versus just a traditional couple that are just, not as advanced.
Right,
Let's
right.
say.
I wouldn't say necessarily easier because, finding people, if you're involved in a kink or in a particular lifestyle, finding people to match with that have the same ideas or want the same things, whereas other people will say that they're into certain things and then they aren't, or they'll say, oh, I just, said that so that you would like me versus being authentic and saying, you know what, I'm interested in learning about it. I see a lot of people also trying, coming from their starting point, they're in a relationship, they're a couple, they want to try these things. And so oftentimes when I meet with them, it's learning how to communicate about it and how to ask the questions and what is the psychoeducation around it, thinking about harm reduction, making sure that, there's no harm comes to either of the parties involved in the relationship. And so it depends on, what it is.
And but do you think that for them, when it comes to the comfort that they have in their sexuality and all, when they go into the dating scene, don't they feel they're going to be judged if they say they're into BDSM and they're afraid that the other person is going to say, "Whoa, whoa, this is not my cup of tea here."
Right. Right. Well, I think that a lot of people who are into BDSM or into alternate lifestyles a lot of people use dating apps and things of that nature. So that tends to be in the initial conversations, or they use formats to meet people specifically for that, like
Oh,
FetLife
yes.
or
Okay.
things of that nature. Or they put in, their profiles on dating apps that this is what I'm into, so people can see what they're into before they even connect.
I see. That makes sense. So, I mean, when we look at the
Some
complexity,
people don't, though. Some people don't, and I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Some
uh,
people don't, and then they kind of drop it in your lap, like this is what I'm into, and that could be very off-putting.
and then, but is there like a typical time that you have to let them know? Do you tell them after the second date, third date, or you try to wait too long, and then by the time that you tell them this, they get very disappointed. You say, "Why didn't you tell me this in the beginning?"
Right. Well, I can tell you when I work with people who are into cross-gender dressing, that's not something they are likely to reveal for a very long time. And then when it does come out, it is very off-putting to their partners because they didn't know that that was something that they were interested in, but they often have shame and embarrassment over their desire. Say a man wearing women's clothing,
Mhm.
you know, they it's very hard for them to find your typical straight, person who is comfortable and accepting of some of those behaviors. So, you know, unless that's something you reveal up front, it is going to become a problem.
And that's why they say what you mean and mean what you say, right?
Absolutely. 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 I mean, I don't think I would say that on a first date, but if you go on 2 or 3 dates with somebody and you seem to like them and they like you, I think that's the only equitable thing to do is to tell them this is what I'm into. And, if this is not something you're comfortable with, then we need to have a discussion about that.
Interesting. But then I see with the dynamic of relationship in the 21st century, Lori, we see a lot more people having to become an expert psychologist to be able to really understand what is a mixed signal and what is a missed signal. So, sometimes it's very, very hard to read between the lines. So when it comes to understanding, what have you missed? Because some people are completely oblivious if the other person is kind of like shows interest, then the person will not see those signs. But is there something that can be like a specific way for people to decipher what are those signs?
I generally always fall back on asking questions, communication, putting it out there like, I'm really enjoying our time together and I could, see this maybe going somewhere. How do you feel about that? I mean, you miss 100% of the shots that you don't take.
That's true.
So the worst that could happen is the other person could say, you know what, I don't feel the same way you do. Probably not. And being honest with people, if you don't like someone, I'd gone on plenty of dates in my dating years and I had no problem. I mean, that's me. Everybody's different, obviously, saying, you know what, you seem like a really nice guy, but I just don't really feel the chemistry because it's the chemistry that's really important. And I'd rather just tell them. I mean, I've been ghosted just like everybody else, when, you think you had a really nice time and then you never hear from that person again. And then you're confused. It is very confusing. And so I think one of the important things to do is to ask the questions and to be not afraid to put it out there for people to answer them and be okay with whatever that answer is. I mean, sure, it'll hurt, but I would rather, rip off a Band-Aid really fast and then it only hurts for a second and then I can move on. So adapting the mindset of, that's okay, next.
Absolutely. But do you think that mixed signal, not missed, mixed, can they constitute a red flag?
Absolutely. But it also depends on what the mixed signal is. You know what I mean? So if they're saying they really like you, but don't call you except for once a month, or they say that they don't want anything too serious and they're blowing up your phone every day,
Okay.
that would definitely constitute as a red flag and something to say, you said you didn't really want anything serious, but you're blowing up my phone all day long and I find that confusing. Like
Okay.
how do you see yourself in that situation? What is your interpretation of all of that contact if you're not really looking for a serious relationship?
So
Or vice
imagine,
versa, if they say you are looking for a serious relationship, but I don't hear from you.
that's so true. But then,
There's a very old book. It's called The Rules. I don't know if you remember that book. It was The Rules for Women in Dating. It was around forever. And one of the things they say is to always be busy when somebody like don't say you're sitting around waiting for people. And also, when it comes to dating, because usually the men tend to be more of the pursuer, I would say if it's Wednesday and you haven't asked me to go out on Friday or Saturday and you call me on Wednesday, I'm going to say I already have plans, even if I don't, because that is not considerate of my time, and that would concern me as well.
so is there like a specific time that you have to allow the person to call the one who's the pursuer to be able to set a date for the weekend?
I would say by Wednesday, the latest. If you want to do something with me on Friday, Saturday, or Sunday, Wednesday would be the latest time to call because I like to think I'm already planning my weekend by Wednesday, either with my family or my friends, or, I'm certainly don't want to just get stuck having nothing to do. So I would think that they would already know what they're thinking about doing. And that feels a little bit like gameplay. Like if they haven't asked me by Wednesday if I'm free, it means maybe they're asking other people if they're free first, and then I'm the fallback. And I would want to be conscious of that.
So now I know there's a new term. Well, 10, 15 years ago, it was friends with benefits, and now they call it situationship. So
Hmm.
the situationship has a different connotation, Lori, in terms of the responsibilities that you have with that person, because a lot of people are confused about that term. So if you could
Hmm.
kind of fill in, what is does it situationship, is it exactly friends with benefit, or is it a case where I'm not really for commitment, I really like you physically, I enjoy spending time with you, but we should not have that status of boyfriend girlfriend?
I think it could be any number of things, and I think that I would want that defined. If we're going out on dates and we're also sleeping together, that's something different than getting together once a week and just having an intimate time together or having sex together, or the other popular term now is Netflix and chill,
I
but I
know
think
that
I
one.
think that needs to be specific, and because if you think about it, we all know men feel close through having sex. Women,
I think you froze there, Lori. You still hear me? Lori, are you still there? Hmm, I think. Loading. So go ahead. I'm sorry about that, guys. Yeah, I know that you guys were talking about this. We're talking about situationship and all, and
Mhm.
to make sure that we understand the difference between what is just friends with benefits and what is the situation. As you mentioned, a few factors or something that needs to be clear in terms of what we need to be able to make sure to disclose to the other person what we expect from the situationship.
Right, exactly. I think that's hugely important to have full disclosure about that because, you know, are we monogamous? Are you, being intimate with other people? Again, you're thinking about harm reduction where that's concerned. Are we using condoms, or if we're just the two of us together and neither one of us is having intimacy with another person, then maybe that's something we don't have to do. Also disclosing, STDs, STIs, same thing. Um, if that's an issue, telling people, what you're coming in with. I know a lot of people, especially, in my generation of women dating, they will often tell me they will legitimately ask a man for, proof that he's been recently tested and that he's clean and before even having sex,
Mhm.
because condoms can't prevent everything, obviously, when it comes to sexually transmitted diseases. So I think those things are really important as well, especially if it's just a sexual relationship, that the other person, you know what they're doing as well, and whether or not you can tolerate that. Some people might be like, well, if you're sleeping with me, you can't be sleeping with anybody else. Other people may not care. So knowing where each of you stand on that point is really important.
Absolutely. And so one more thing as well, before we can jump into the question and answer, and I know that you and Dee already started with those questions when I was, trying to troubleshoot my internet. I just want to make sure that when it comes to dating in the 21st century, and now with everything that we spoke about, how to communicate properly, how to be able to talk more with depth versus superficiality. How do you see the future of dating, Lori? I mean, especially now with online dating apps, with all those scams that are happening with those dating sites, etc. People want to find or want to, yeah, find genuine connection. How is that possible now with how the whole dating scene is structured?
Well, what I generally recommend for people, I mean, people can use apps if they want to, but yes, there are those risks in using dating apps, being catfished and all those other things. I always like to tell people the best way to meet people is out in the wild. You don't have to go to bars and things of that nature. There's meetup groups. You can go play tennis or pickleball or join a gym or join a hiking group if you like hiking, or a book club. There's all different kinds of things out there. And there are meetup apps to show all different kinds of interests, like people who like to do the same things, getting together as a group, not necessarily as a dating group, but it's just a group of people coming together to enjoy activities. And I always say that, if you find other people who like to do some of the things you like to do, there is the possibility of meeting someone. So I think getting out of our phones and getting back into society and doing things where other people are going to be, I think you have a much more likelihood of somebody that you connect with and that you have chemistry with because you met them more organically.
Oh, that's interesting. Yes. And but do you think that the future looks bright for those who are single and who are
I do. I do. I think, people are living longer. People are getting healthier, and, the idea of sharing our time with someone else. I think we're generally, not everyone, I can't say everyone there are people who don't have that desire, but I think the majority of people want that. They want a partner. They want somebody to do things with and spend time with, and share adventures with. And I think that it's about being patient and not being afraid to meet people and take the chances, and and to be consistent about what you want. Like, I tell people, make a list of red flags for
Mhm.
you, and what you want in a partner, what you don't want in a partner. Like, some people are like, well, I have a PhD, so I want to date somebody who is an equal or close to equal in education. Or um people who some people won't date someone if they've had a history of drug or alcohol problems or major psychiatric issues and things like that. And knowing that these are things that you want or don't want in your life. Maybe you want somebody who wears a suit and tie to work, or maybe you like, construction workers, or firemen or policemen or whatever. So going out of your way to look for what fits into those things for yourself. And I think that pro and con list of wants and things that you don't want can really help guide what you're seeking and how to seek it.
Beautiful. So Dee, do you have any questions for me or Lori? Because I was not there when you guys were interacting. Like I said, I was trying to fix my internet issue. So do you have any question regarding the topics that we covered today?
Not particularly. We were just chatting to take up the time to get you back online again. No, I don't have anything specific.
So does that all make sense, what we discussed about on the communication, conscious communication, and how to be able to talk openly with the other person that you're dating, and be able to kind of like get the core reason as to why, or if this person wants something serious, if they just want to be able to have fun, if they want to be able to build something that is long term. I mean, is there anything in there that you feel like you want to be able to add, or that was a bit confusing? Because like I said, we only have like a short period of time to be able to cover such a broad topic, but I just want to be able to have your feedback.
Well, no, and I think that needs to be like in the first maybe date, I guess. I guess the timeline as to when to ask that question so that you don't get too invested in the wrong thing if it's not a match, right? Is when is it appropriate? So I guess it would be the first date to kind of set that up. And then hopefully that person isn't, how do you know that that person is being genuine and they're not just saying that's what they want just to, get to the intimacy phase, and then it's like, oh, well, you don't know if you're being played.
Right, right. And I definitely, that's, what Dr. Dan was saying before about the consistency, say what you mean what you say, and then do the things you're saying you're going to do. So if they're just trying to get to the intimacy phase, that's where your love bombing comes in. That's where they're blowing up your phone 24/7. Like if you like me and you want to talk to me once a day or, whatever, that's one thing as we're getting to know each other. But, that constant pushing forward from the beginning, that would definitely be a red flag for me.
So a red flag, does it also mean deal breakers? Or is it, would you consider this? I mean, because deal breakers is, let's say, as you said, about someone who's a PhD, you will just be stuck with at least someone has similar education. But red flags is something that is more gradual. They show up slowly but surely, like boiling water. And then after that, you start realizing, oh my God, my skin is getting burned here. So do you feel that when it comes to deal breakers, is what usually we put those parameters online dating to say this person have to be between 25 and 40 years old? Anything older or anything younger, that's a deal breaker.
Absolutely. I think that's really important. If you have specific deal breakers, to have them out there from the beginning, or, if you're sitting and having a conversation and, the person says, oh, I was diagnosed at 25 with schizophrenia and I was in the military, but I'm stable on my medication, that would be just a deal breaker right there. Like, I don't want my work and my private life to intermingle like that. And there are other people who, they wouldn't care, like people who have ADHD, or maybe somebody who's, gender non-conforming. You don't know unless they tell you. So that's one of the things that you have to think about is that something I could live with or not? Like if somebody said, oh yeah, I'm an alcoholic, but I haven't had a drink in 20 years, that would probably be less concerning. If they have 20 years of sobriety, that's, I mean what I say and I do what I do. And so where you stand with me.
Absolutely. So before we finalize this workshop, do you have any additional question?
No, I don't. And I just want to say thank you to both of you. This has been very informative and I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
So before we conclude today's workshop, I'd like to invite Lori to be able to share her contact information. So if anyone here like you, Dee, is interested in her services, please let us know. So how can they reach you, Lori?
Well, I have a website, which is SHAPIROSextherapy.com. You could reach me through that, or you could reach me through my phone number is 240-426-9115. You can call my number and leave me a message, and I usually get back to people within 24 hours. Usually less because I feel the pressure to call people right back. And my email is lshapiro, lcswc@gmail.com. So those are all 3 ways that you can find me.
Beautiful. Well, Lori, thank you so much for taking the time out of your
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's my pleasure. I'm always happy to participate and talk and share information. I was saying to Dee when we had the little break, I have the best job in the world, you know, so I can't, you know, I really enjoy it. So thank you for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. And we also have a lot of upcoming workshop happening all through 2026. So featuring also very, expert panelists and a wide range of engaging topic focused on dating and relationships. So we'd like to wish you, Dee and Lori, a wonderful rest of your Sunday afternoon. And we look
Thank you too.
very soon. Thank you all for now.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Pleasure.
You're welcome. Have a great Sunday.
You too.
Thank you.